Uh, I had the opportunity to meet Marina in Bulgaria almost 2 years ago at a Beyond Suffering conference, disability conference, and that was a wonderful day. I wasn't just Marina, but Lydia and Jordy, and then this past when was this? March, beginning of March, Marina, that
Yeah.
I was in Terrassa in Spain, and we had another disability conference there, and it was just wonderful. I love these dear sisters, and also Jordy, and very grateful to be a part of this. Marina's right. I'm 16 years old. I just started. No, that's not true. I'm from Ecuador, born and raised in Ecuador, and I moved to the United States 12 years ago. And yeah, happily married. I have three kids that are little, so I'm like in the trenches. There's just a lot of stuff happening with my little ones, but they're a blessing. Uh, yeah, so my hope with this session today is to create some conversations about volunteer recruitment. Yeah, I was in youth ministry for 16 years, 10 of those as a pastor. And the reality is that doing youth ministry, at least in the United States, has a particular flavor. It's very unique. It's very demanding, not only in the programs, but also in the expectations that we put into youth workers. It was a fascinating experience, very different than when I was in Ecuador. So I worked with a lot of volunteers. My youth group was 250 kids, and I had over 40 volunteers that they help on a regular basis. And most of the volunteers that I had were with me for 5+ years. And it was a wonderful experience. Now, with this session on recruiting volunteers, which is very important for all of us, it is important that we recognize the times that we're in. It's a very different time. We're now having Gen Z joining the workplace, and Gen Z are actually starting to volunteer. And because Gen Z have been raised in a very different society, especially because of technology, we need a different, hopefully an updated approach in how we recruit volunteers. And I'm going to share my screen because I would like to start with a story. Um, Usually when we think about volunteers, we kind of like have a particular set of maybe expectations, or we have a particular model that used to work in the past, and then we think, okay, if this thing worked in the past, if I do this thing, if I recruit them in this particular way, then I'm sure it's gonna work forever. And the reality is that not we have to be careful with that kind of model because Blockbuster was a great example of a company that decided to say, no, we're not going to adapt, we're not going to change. We really believe that our business model is great. We really know our client. We really know how we gonna go about exercising our the way that we do our company. So we don't need to adapt. We don't need to change. So in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Blockbuster was an undisputed leader in home entertainment with thousands of brick and mortar stores worldwide. It dominated the video rental market, becoming a household name. But as the digital age began to take shape, Blockbuster failed to recognize the seismic shift in how people consumed media. In 2000, Reed Hastings, the co-founder of Netflix, approached Blockbuster with an offer, a partnership to bring their fledgling DVD rental by mail service to Blockbuster's vast customer base. The offer was dismissed. Blockbuster's executives, confident in the business model, didn't see online rental or digital streaming as a real threat. They believe customers will always prefer the in-store experience despite the growing demand for convenience and the rise of digital technology. Meanwhile, Netflix continued to innovate, offering subscription-based rentals with no late fees, a concept that Blockbuster failed to appreciate until it was too late. As Netflix expanded into streaming in the mid 2000s, Blockbuster stuck to its outdated strategy, doubling down on physical stores and trying to compete with late fees and new release premiums. The final blow came when Redbox emerged with its convenient low-cost DVD kiosks, and Netflix's streaming service began to dominate the entertainment landscape. Blockbuster, despite its legacy, was caught in a cycle of overconfidence and complacency, failing to pivot it in time. By 2010, Blockbuster was forced into bankruptcy, and the once great video rental giant faded into history, a victim of its failure to adapt. It's a classic case of strategic hubris, relying on a winning formula for too long while competitors saw the future and moved swiftly to capitalize on it. Today, Netflix is a streaming powerhouse, and Blockbuster's name lives on only as a reminder of how rapidly the business world can change and how dangerous it's to ignore the future. So my hope is that with the different, with this silly title that I come up with this session, the 7 Sins and 7 Skills, can just be thought provoking and to make us uh, process, to make us meditate on like how is my volunteer recruitment in the thinking to what worked yesterday can quickly become a recipe for relevance tomorrow. So the 7 Sins for recruiting volunteers. I'm gonna go through this each of these sins, and also I'm gonna apply with the different skills that I'm just proposing for a better volunteer engagement. Because as all of us know, all of us who work with volunteers, we believe that volunteer is the lifeblood of the organization. Without them, it is impossible to exist. So here's the first sin. Here's the first sin. And I'm going to leave time at the end for any questions that you may have, or maybe some thoughts, or maybe some ideas that you may have for all of us to share. The first sin is to expect announcements to get volunteers. I'm sure all of you know that.
Excuse me, Ricardo. We cannot listen to you.
Marina, you saying something?
Yeah, the voice it's coming and going.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sometimes we are losing your voice. We cannot hear some.
Oh, I cannot hear you, friends.
Now 2 or 3
Maybe something
times it happened
I've
that
been
some
trying to figure out this
sentences
audio.
just lost. We don't know why.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you guys can hear me now. Yeah, I've been having some issues with my audio, so I apologize for that. So what I was saying is that um, the reason that we shouldn't expect announcement to get volunteers is because the reality is that most of the people don't want to volunteer. Most of the people don't want to volunteer because volunteering it's an inconvenience. The people that volunteer with us are people that they have cut the vision of the ministry. They have cut the.
We lost again. We cannot hear you.
Okay.
Ricardo, maybe you speak too fast and you lose the connection.
Okay, let me change this then. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, let's try that. Let's try that. The technology cannot keep up with me, and that's totally fine. What I was saying is that yeah, the reality is that volunteering, it's for the most of the people is it's an inconvenience. So we want to make sure that we don't rely on announcements. Literally 2 days ago, I heard from someone saying, "Hey, I want to volunteer in my church." Yeah, people keep talking about volunteering, but no one has approached me to talk about this. No one has approached me to have a conversation about volunteer. Because in my church, they keep giving announcement, hey, you should serve here, you should serve there, and all that. But then this person said, no one has approached me to do that. And what is interesting, the modern volunteer wants to be approached, wants to receive an invitation. So instead, what should be the skill for all of us? Instead, we should make a personal invitation. Ask personally rather than relying on announcements. Ask personally rather than relying on announcements. A personal invitation is I believe, is the most effective way to gain a person's commitment to serve. If you come to a person personally saying, I would love for you to volunteer with us because I see this in you, and because you will be a great fit and you'll be a great person to be a part of the culture of our team, and because your skills are a great fit to help us accomplish our mission, I believe is more effective to gain that person's commitment to serve. So ask personally, rather than relying on announcements. The second sin that I've seen is recruiting alone. And I wish I knew this when I just started serving in youth ministry. Because as leaders, we feel the weight of it's on me to bring people along to be excited about serving. And that's a big mistake because it's a very lonely approach of only myself is the only person to recruit individuals. My suggestion to you is for you to this will be the skill to put together a special recruiting task force. I think it will be very good for the people that you're trying to recruit that you're not the only one passionate about the ministry or your organization. You want people to know that there are more people excited about that. And what I do when I started doing later, after my time being in youth ministry, I started putting people who were passionate about the ministry to help me recruit others. So it was not just on me, but I had volunteers. I asked other volunteers, some of them that were moms and dads, who were a part of that recruiting task to help me recruit other parents instead of me doing it on my own. So put together a special recruiting task force. So for example, at Johnny and Friends, we have a volunteer initiative called the Area Teams. And one of the teams is called the Stewardship Team. And the Stewardship Team, we have a definition for this team. Basically, it means that members of this team use their voice, energy, and influence to raise disability awareness and connect others to Johnny and Friends' mission while cultivating a community of care that empowers other area team leaders, members, and every volunteer in personal and meaningful ways. So in other words, this stewardship team is in charge of taking care of two vital resources that we need in our ministry. Number one, our donors, and number two, volunteers. We cannot exist without the other. We can have millions of dollars, but if we don't have people helping us mobilize and reach out people with disabilities, we just can't do it. Or we can have lots of volunteers, but if we don't have donors, it will be very hard to reach and to distribute hundreds of and thousands of chairs around the world. It will be very difficult. So this team is in charge to help us care for our volunteers. So that will be a suggestion for you. Put a task force that can help you care for your volunteers. How do they doing? What's their birthday? When are their wedding anniversaries? Maybe they lost someone. So every death anniversary comes, and getting those phone calls during that day means so much. How are you caring for your volunteers? The third sin is recruiting only volunteers who make long-term commitments. Recruiting volunteers who only make long-term commitments. The reality is that what I've noticed is that in the past, the vast majority of individuals were able to volunteer long-term. The vast majority of people, you see it even in the missionary community, you see it in other nonprofits, in other organizations that you had volunteers who serve for long-term. But the reality is now with the modern volunteer, with the younger volunteer, it's very difficult to have long-term commitment. Plus, it has been my observation that in some of the things that we do in working people with disabilities, it's very intimidating for many individuals to see how should I work in that ministry? I'm very, very scared. I don't know how to do it. I cannot do that because I'm very, very scared to be involved. So usually because something in the past worked, in this case, recruiting, hey, be involved for 6 months or a year or 3 years. It worked in the past. And sometimes we keep looking for those types of volunteers. But now my suggestion is that you will find some great volunteers who can only serve for a short season. And that's okay. That's okay for you to realize that there are some volunteers, especially the younger volunteers, that can only serve for a short term. So the skill should be recruit short-term volunteers for special projects. Recruit short-term volunteers. Recruit short-term volunteers for project teams. Basically, you have something specific, a specific event that's coming up. You can recruit volunteers for a very short period, for a week or two, or for mostly a month. Recruit short-term project teams. The more specific the time limit, the more specific you are about the time limit, I believe the more people you will likely get to join you on a project. And also, it might also open the door to longer commitments because now they can see what the ministry is all about. They can see why you're passionate about what you're doing. So you're getting a taste of that. So this could be another skill for you to develop, recruit short-term project teams. The number 4, which this is something that happened to me a lot, is assume that no means never. You go around and you start recruiting folks and you're getting no, no, I can't, no, I can't. So the sin is to assume that when you go to someone that you really value and ask that person, hey, would you like to volunteer with me? That when that person says no means never. Sometimes that no means not now because we don't know what's going on in the life of the person. So maybe sometimes that no means I can do this now. So the skill that I should that I'm asking you to develop is assume that a no means not now, or maybe that no means not this position. I don't want to be involved in this position. I do believe that you should think of a no as an open door to listen carefully to the reasons behind the no. What are some of the reasons behind the no? Why are the other people saying no to volunteering with you or your organization? And this is tough for some of us to like listen to. I read a book on leadership called Be the Unicorn, and one of the chapters was called The Gift of Self-Awareness. To be self-aware how we come across, to be self-aware how we lead, to be self-aware how we parent, to be self-aware how we are friends to others. And that's a tremendous gift, but a lot of us we don't like receiving that type of feedback. So I think it will be very good for you and I to constantly realize what are some of the reasons that people are saying no to volunteering in my ministry or in this particular position. But above all, assume that a no means not now. Sin number 5, recruiting out of desperation. And I think most of us can fall into that category that we're just desperate. We just need people to come and help. And I don't know about you, but in my case, I'm trying to pretend that I'm not desperate. But I tell folks that pretending that you're not desperate is kind of like having bad breath. You cannot tell, but the other people can that you're actually desperate. So recruiting out of desperation, that to me, that's a big sin because the reality is that serving in your organization and serving in our organization, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to serve. Effective recruiting demands a clear, complete, and brief presentation of the roles and responsibilities of the position you are recruiting for. So help volunteers understand the what and why and how their experience and skills fit the role. So it is very important, my friends, that you have clarity about what's the vision of your organization, what's the mission of the organization, what is the mission and vision, purpose of the particular role description that you have. So clarity is kindness. Therefore, the skill is to develop a description for each volunteer role. Develop a description for each volunteer role. What do you want them to accomplish? Can you articulate that with clarity? So, for example, for Johnny and friends, I come up with a definition. It's a little bit longer, but at least I have clarity about how do I envision a volunteer. When I think about a volunteer, what comes to my mind? So here's what it says. It says that Johnny and friends, we define a volunteer as someone called by God to invest their time and talent in creating a world where every person with a disability finds hope, dignity, and their place in the body of Christ. Johnny and friends commits to stewarding that investment by providing training and community to our volunteers so that they can reach neighbors and local churches with practical help and gospel hope. We do it all so that God's house will be full and so Jesus will be glorified. So that definition helps me every time I think about volunteer. That's what comes to my mind. And when I ask volunteers to serve in a specific way, I always give them a specificity about how to serve. So develop a description for each volunteer role. Number 6, and this is very applicable. This is something that I found from a book called The New Breed, talking about the 21st volunteer, especially with Gen Z. And this was very fascinating because I can put myself into this category of treating professionals like servants. And it's interesting because I went around and asked some folks that are around my age, young professionals, and say, hey, okay, would you like to volunteer at a nonprofit who's helping people with disabilities, but only just folding pamphlets or folding brochures? And that person said, all of them, I asked like 10 people, and all of them say, no, I don't want to be a part of that. Even though the mission of the organization is compelling, the vision is compelling, the work that they're doing is amazing, but how the young volunteer, the young professional sees that type of work, unfortunately, they see it as a waste of time. In fact, professionals, if we ask that to professionals, they can come across as kind of like belittling them. So, my suggestion for all of us is to not belittle busy professionals by asking them to do busy work. Is that work of folding brochures and pamphlets is really important? Absolutely, it is. But in the current volunteer, the Gen Z, the professional, they want to use their strongest skills and abilities to accomplish something significant that they will enjoy doing. They wanna use their skills and abilities to accomplish something significant that they will enjoy doing. And also another thing is that a lot of young professionals, I mean, I don't know about in your countries, but even in the United States, the wealth of young professionals is not as much as the older generation. So they're trying to be very careful in how to utilize their time and skills to do that. So if they can do something they're already good at and are passionate about, and they can bring that into the area that you're asking them to volunteer, is very significant. Will be very, very significant for them. But in order for you to know those specific ways that the volunteers have skills and have experience, you have to get to know them. You have to see them in other areas beyond the area of that they're volunteering. So recruit specific people for specific roles. That would be my suggestion for skill number 6. Recruit specific people for a specific role. Ask professionals to oversee significant areas of your organization that also represent what they love doing. I asked a friend of mine who is an audio engineer, I say, what would you like to do? Go to the soundboard and clean everything that is in the soundboard, all the cables, XLR cables and things like that. Would you like to just do that? Or do 2 Saturdays of training other audio leaders for this particular church? Like, what would you like to do? And say, oh, I would love to do the leading part, because he's already an audio engineer, has a lot of experience, and he's very passionate about that. And volunteers who are passionate about things, they don't mind the time, they don't mind anything because they're passionate about that. So recruit specific people for specific roles who are passionate about what they do. They're very passionate about what they do. Okay, so far I've given you 6 sins and 6 skills. The last one, it's applicable for all of you. And when I come across this to this specific sin, it really impacted me a lot because I made the mistake of this very specific sin. I mean, I made all the mistakes, but this one was very, very impactful for me. Sin number 7 and last one, hire professionals who know nothing about volunteer management. Hire professionals who know nothing about volunteer management. Unfortunately, many organizations make the mistake of hiring leaders who do not understand and value the role volunteers can play in their organization's success. That's very unfortunate. There are many leaders who just get annoyed by volunteers. They get annoyed by how flaky they are, or how they're not persisting, or they have different priorities, or they're just not very good at different things. And these leaders who are supposed to do volunteer management and engagement, they fail over and over again to be good representatives of caring for the volunteers. So my suggestion for you, and something that I constantly think about, because my role is to take care of volunteers, is to look for someone who is highly committed to volunteers, someone who is passionate about people, who is passionate about caring for others, who have a shepherding heart, who is patient, who is gracious with volunteers, who can inspire others. Because the big mistake that we have is just to have someone that just can plain things, maybe in a calendar, but not to inspire them, to connect with them, to care for them. So here's my final skill for you. Hire managers, hire leaders who are committed to strong volunteer engagement. Look for them. And here's what happens. Usually these people that you're hiring are part of your volunteer base. There are those volunteers who are passionate about your mission. They're passionate about your vision. They're passionate about bringing people together. Usually these managers or these leaders that you're hiring are part of that volunteer base that you have. So be intentional in coming alongside them. Be intentional in getting to know them. Be intentional in pouring your passion, your love, your expertise, your education in those individuals by mentoring them, caring for them, and loving them and their families. So, in conclusion, first, no volunteers equals no execution. Second, improper volunteer recruitment leads to burnout and disengagement. And poor recruitment plus a negative experience equals reputational damage. The reality is that when volunteers who have been having a bad experience by serving in our organizations leave, they usually talk about others in the same way that people talk about the great things that we're doing or the great events that we're doing. And that's one of the best ways to promote what we do. They also talk about some negative experience. So we have to be intentional about how we recruit and the overall experience that they're having when they're serving with us, so they can tell that we are for them. Recruiting volunteers thoughtfully. I want to leave you with this final thought. Recruiting volunteers thoughtfully sets the foundation for long-term engagement. I saw that for years. If I pour my life to these volunteers and I just equip them and empower them and develop them, they really take care of fulfilling the vision. They really take care of fulfilling the mission. Long term, most of my volunteers, 90% of my volunteers were with me for more than 5 years. So I do believe that recruiting volunteers thoughtfully, intentionally, sets the foundation for long-term engagement. Volunteers who feel valued, well-trained, and aligned with the mission are more likely to return for future opportunities and inspire others to get involved, creating a sustainable volunteer base. So that's all I have for you. I have some I have three questions after this, but I don't know. I want to be respectful of your time. I don't know if we have time to go over this section, but if not, maybe you can take a picture of this and reflect on this and talk to someone. What were some of the three most important takeaways for recruiting volunteers effectively? What were some of the three takeaways that resonated with you throughout this session? Number two, what specific strategies worked well in the past volunteer drives? I mean, what were some of the things that you did well in the past that helped bring in volunteers and why? And also, what challenges have you faced when recruiting volunteers and how you could address those issues moving forward? I really trust this was helpful to you and looking forward to hearing from you. What are some of your thoughts?
Thank you, Ricardo. I have
My pleasure.
two questions.
Yes.
One, is this PowerPoint available? Could we have it, or it's strictly, Johnny and Friends? And the second question, it's what will be a good percent between staff and volunteers? So how much, for instance, with family retreats we had for many years, also in partnership with Johnny and Friends. But what will be a good, balance between staff and volunteers?
Yeah, can you repeat the second question? Because I was trying to put you here in my ears because I've been having issues. But what was the second question?
Yeah, Ricardo, this was the second question. When you have a specific project, like what we had with the family retreats, what would be a good balance, a good percentage between, full-time staff and volunteers?
Yeah, that's very, very good question. So please let me know if the audio goes out because I have to make some changes here. I do believe that it all depends on a case by case scenario. So I want to be very careful in being prescriptive on how much should I tell you staff and volunteers. My view of staff is are people who help mobilize other key volunteers. So staff should exist to facilitate the involvement of volunteers. Staff should exist to multiply themselves in other people. So maybe that can be like a 2 to 10 ratio or 2 to 15 ratio or 2 to 20 ratio. I mean, it really depends on who is a part of that. I do know that in my experience, I try to put high capacity individuals to be as staff that come with the right expectations, that come with clarity, and they understand that their job exists to serve and mobilize and create opportunities for volunteers to be involved. So in the family retreat, it will be, for example, you can put like a staff who is in charge of maybe some of the major logistics or a vision for the family retreat, and then you have multiple volunteers that can help with specific areas with specific tasks during the family retreat. That would be my suggestion, and I don't know if that's helpful to you. And your first question, yes, I can share. I'm gonna do it through Marina just to share my PowerPoint so you can have it. And yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you, Ricardo. Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts? Maybe what was one thing of everything that I shared that kind of like resonated with you that could be helpful for the group?
I have also another question, Ricardo. If I see people are a little bit shy.
It's all right.
So how for instance, in Romania, we came from a communist background, and the idea of volunteering was, disgusting. And so Ceausescu get us, full to be volunteering for the state. How could we create a culture of volunteering? Because we still struggle with it, especially in Romania, we still struggle with the idea to volunteer. It's not popular, it's not common. Of course, we saw clearly a progress, and I'm glad that Amy will come in Romania to help other people like this. But how we as organizations working with people with disabilities, how we could create this culture. We tried with Johnny and Friends and David Hooker and John Wern, and we had all kinds of seminars, but we saw that it's still, a little progress, I can say, and it's not like a wow in recruiting volunteers.
Yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, I will take that question even further. There are certain countries around the world that they don't even have a word that describes volunteers. So that's a very good question. So here's what this will be my personal opinion. So I am persuaded, I am a firm believer that passion is contagious. Passion is contagious. So when people see passion, my observation has been that they want to be a part of what that person is doing, whatever is passionate about. So a couple of things that I can share with you, and I hope this is helpful to you. Number one is no one wants to volunteer out of need. Hey, come help, people need it. No one really wants to be a part of that. That has been my observation. It's very rare, a very small percentage of someone that says, oh yeah, I want to be a part of that, but it's a very small percentage. We need to cast a vision of why is important, why are you involved in what you're doing? The times that I'm being inspired to volunteer has been out of a vision. When someone has said, this is why we're doing it, and stories, and they say, yeah, this is what's happening. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. The second thing is when I see passion in that individual. Here's one disconnect that I see between the older and younger generation, and this is just me, the youth pastoring me, is that the older generation has all the information and experience and has lived for a long time that the younger generation is lacking. But unfortunately, one of the things that the younger generation has that sometimes I don't see as much in the older generation is passion. And I am persuaded that every single time the older generation shows passion about the work, I've noticed that the younger generation is inspired to do that. And especially in countries that they have experienced an oppression and things like that, that's been very difficult. I think we have to provide a redemptive view of why doing this particular work, that is selfless work, it's very, very meaningful. So it takes a daily time it just takes a daily work of not only having a clear vision, not only be passionate, but here will be the third thing: to get to know those volunteers, to get to know the younger generation. So that will be the third thing. Number one is vision, clear vision of what we're doing. Number two is passion. I do believe that the younger generation, they want to be inspired. That's what, like, people from the corporate world, they want to have their employees with the heart of a volunteer. Because a volunteer is just driven by vision, it's driven by passion, it's not driven by money. That's what we're doing this selflessly. So even CEOs, they want to cultivate the heart of a volunteer with the employees because they know that they will go far and beyond what they're being asked for. So the number one is vision. Number two is passion. Number three, we must get to know the younger generation. We must get to know them. We must spend time with them. Um, my worldview comes from a Christian worldview. The Lord Jesus did that. He was not just throwing parables up in the air and hoping that people will get it. He spent time with his disciples, especially when they didn't understand things. He explained to them. He spent time with them. So I am very persuaded. That this principle, these three suggestions that I'm giving you, Samuel, are transcultural. It goes because I've been traveling to 16 countries already. And I see in every country, no one can resist a powerful vision. No one can resist passion. And no one can really resist being loved by someone. For countries like me in Latin America, we Latinos love, and we just kiss everybody, hug everybody. I don't know, maybe in Spain not so much, but that a little bit. I don't know about your country, and maybe in some countries it's difficult. I mean, to give a hug, I mean, that's very difficult, but we have to find a way in your own context to transmit those three things: a clear vision, passion. As you can tell, I'm passionate about this. And three, we must get to know them. I don't know. Hope it's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you, Ricardo.
Awesome.
Okay, so guys, I don't have a question. It was great, the presentation, everything. I just have to leave now. Sorry
No
about
worries.
that. Yeah.